squirrel with piece missing.
We are now live. Thank you. Good morning, or I guess it's afternoon, sorry. I'm Gwen Whistler, the Chair of the Finance and Human Resources Committee, and I'd like to welcome you to the October 26th meeting, remote meeting. All council committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we continue to work through holding these committee meetings a bit differently. Although not as differently as, pretty much the same as we've been doing for the last year and a half. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We're streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city's website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone. For those of you out there today, welcome. For today's meeting, we have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 5257. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, speakers will need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. So let me just check here a minute. All right, so I'm going to go through and introduce all the committee members and staff who are participating virtually. Not all of you, but some. And if you would just say a quick hello, and then if you're not speaking, just to remind you to please mute your phone. So I'm going to introduce you, Councilwoman Sandra Kilgore.
Good afternoon.
Councilwoman Sage Turner.
Good afternoon.
City Manager Deborah Campbell.
Hello.
Interim Assistant City Manager Peggy Rowe.
Hello, everyone.
Finance Director Tony McDowell.
Good afternoon.
Budget Manager Taylor Floyd.
Good afternoon.
Sanitation Division Manager, Jess Foster.
Hi, everyone.
Great. All right, so I will be stating the where we are on the agenda so that people will have a easier time to follow along, and we'll do a vocal roll call for each vote. Okay. If the council members, want to speak, it's probably easier if you put your virtual hand up so that I can make sure I call on you. So the first item is the approval of the minutes. So do I have any questions or a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, great. Now we'll do a roll call. Councilwoman Kilgore.
Aye.
Councilwoman Turner.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Okay, so the minutes have been approved. So the next item is the CFO update. So I'm going to turn that over to Tony McDowell.
Thank you, Councilmember Whistler, and good afternoon, committee members. We have 3 items we want to cover this afternoon, just briefly under the CFO update. The first is the introduction of some new staff in the finance department. These are folks that you all will be hearing from in future finance committee meetings and also likely at city council meetings as well. We also want to provide you all with just a brief update on where we're at with the American Rescue Plan, the ARPA process, and the award of some of those dollars that we've received through that allocation. And then finally, our Assistant Finance Director, Becky King, is going to give you all a brief update on where we are with our audit. So I'll kick things off. I want to introduce the first of our new staff members, and it's our ARPA, American Rescue Plan Project Manager. Her name is Kim Marmon-Sachs. I think she's been with us for about 3 weeks now. Kim has hit the ground running. I'll turn it over to her and let her introduce herself and kind of also at the same time give you all the update on where we're at with the ARPA planning. Kim?
Thanks, Tony. Good afternoon, everybody. I will update you about ARPA, but in the last few times that I've been introduced, I haven't actually done a bio about myself, and I've had comments and feedbacks to say, where have you come from? Who are you? I clearly don't speak American. I have an English accent, so I just thought I'd just do a quick bio, and then I will update you on ARPA. So this is my second time living in the States. I was VP of training for ADP, HR and payroll many years ago. So I lived in Chicago at that point. So this is my second time living in the States. I've been here 6.5 years. I started my time in Buncombe County, working for Buncombe County as the MARC grant manager. The start of tipping point grants and the Isaac Coleman grants came from that era. And I was part of instigating the very first tipping point grants and going through that procedure and process, which we tried to do in a very different way with Buncombe County in our community engagement. So I feel that stands me in good stead with the community, and then moving forward with the ARPA grant. So I have a background in fund management. I worked for the NHS in the UK, looking at government subsidies for service provision, and just making sure those service provisions were on point for the funds that were given. And then I have a second, kind of string in psychology. So I work a lot in adverse childhood experiences and children's trauma. So the MARC grant also covered that area for Buncombe County. So I'm very excited to be here with the city of Asheville now, doing the ARPA work, because it's, again, funds management and making sure that, the process is going according to plan, and involving the community as much as we can in the process as appropriate. Update on the ARPA grant. We are going as fast as we can, but trying to keep pace with all the rules and regulations and everything that we're learning through the School of Government. It is interesting because there's a lot of nuance and a lot of detail that's coming out of the School of Government about what we can and cannot do with this grant. So it's a learning process, but we're trying to keep on track with our timings. So the RFP under Patricia Rosenberg, she was managing on an interim basis this process and, achieved a lot in a short period of time. So the RFP went out on the 27th of September. We have had a public session on the 13th of October, which was very well attended. Lots of questions asked. I think it was a very successful meeting. And then we got the addenda out to the RFP process on the 20th of October. So that's all going according to plan. So we're now in the stage of building rubrics and scoring in order to get the evaluation ready and the evaluation team ready to go. The response for the RFP process is now the 15th of November. We moved it by 2 weeks just to make sure that we could be extremely thorough on the process, and also add in the new things that we're learning through the School of Government. And as people go through this process, there's a collaborative learning and feedback that's going on with everybody in North Carolina, which is very helpful. So we're expecting responses. We don't know how many. It'll be very interesting to see how many responses we get to the RFP, but the closing date for that is the 15th of November. And then the plan is that we evaluate those proposals, check them for eligibility, and then we're hoping that by the council meeting on January the 11th, that we will have some recommendations from the evaluation team as to which proposals have been evaluated and scored the most appropriately and in line with our criteria. And then it will be up to the council to kind of go from there as far as going forward with the recommendations or coming back with questions. So, there's a lot of work gone into it. I did have to, hit the ground full speed because of the process and where we are with it. But I think we're in very good shape. I'm very positive about, kind of going forward. So yeah, that's my update.
Thank you. Well, welcome aboard, Kim. We appreciate it. Sounds like you have great experience and you'll be helping us through this. The only thing that I would ask, especially as this, if the rules are being interpreted one way or the other, to the extent that we can, and that, it doesn't become, crazy government bureaucracy. If there are grants or people have asked for funds and we determine that it just doesn't fit in the criteria, to the extent that we need to make that as public as we can and explain it so that people don't feel like we potentially pulled the rug out from under them, kind of said, here, apply, but oh, by the way, you don't fit. So I just would, anticipate that might be a criticism. And so let's stay ahead of that.
Yeah, I understand completely, Gwen. We are in a situation where we already know that legal have to be involved in the process for eligibility because of those nuances. And also we are governed by the interim final rule and also state law. Sometimes it's a very fine line to walk between those two things. So yes, we have a full intention of making sure that process is as transparent as we can make it. But yeah, involving legal to look at that to make sure that we are within the guideline that's been issued.
And I'm just wondering, if something just needs a couple tweaks, I don't know, they said X, Y, and Z, they said X in the proposal, but, if they took X out, but they kept Y and Z in, we, think that would work. If we have some sort of iterative process so that people sort of understand, so that I just try to make it as open as we can.
Yeah, understood.
And Ms. Whistler, if I could add, we also, at that information session on ARPA, we also had an information session on other grants that are available, not just in the city, but also in the county. And so additionally, we're looking at, can these applications also possibly qualify for other funding opportunities within the city?
Fit into another category. Good.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and Kim mentioned this, that there were over 90 people on that virtual meeting. So that was a very well-attended meeting. I think it was the week before last.
That's great. Okay.
All right.
Sarah or Sage, do you have any questions or? Okay. Thank you so much, Kim.
All right.
And I believe I think Ms. Kilgore was on that call for the ARPA funding. So thanks for joining.
All right. To introduce our next new staff member, I'm going to turn it over to Frank McGowan.
Good afternoon. As many of you know, Beth Beekle has been supporting this committee for some time. And Beth basically has been doing two jobs for a while. And I think she's anxious to just have one. So as Beth's replacement, we have hired Alicia Carroll. And Alicia, I don't see you on this. There she is. There's Alicia Carroll. And Alicia's been with the city for 9 years. I don't want to take away all of her thunder, so I'm going to let her introduce herself and a little bit of her background.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Alicia Carroll. Like Frank said, I've been with the city a little over 9 years. I started in building safety, which is now development services. And in 2018, I moved to public works as a special projects coordinator. And now I'm the business services supervisor in finance, and I'm happy to be a part of the team.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. And then last but not least for this meeting anyway, I think we're going to hopefully have some new staff in future meetings to introduce you all to as well. I'm going to let Taylor Floyd introduce our new senior budget analyst.
Thanks, Tony. Good afternoon. We're really excited to be staffing the budget division back up. You know, we had some folks that got promoted into other positions in the city, or unfortunately one outside of the city. But we're working to get a new team started back up. And the first member, like I said, really excited to have is Heather Curry, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself and her background. But again, just really excited to have her on board.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Heather Curry. I'm coming to the city of Asheville from the city of Winston-Salem, where I worked as a budget analyst for 4 years, supporting a wide variety of our departments, everything from our tiny 4-person human relations department all the way up to our 200+ member water sewer department, Parks and Rec, did a lot of capital project work as well. So excited to be joining the team here and learning about Asheville and getting settled into the community.
Welcome. I'm sure you'll like Asheville better. But bring us wisdom and experience from other communities. So that'll be really helpful.
All right. Last item under the CFO update today is an update on where we're at with our annual audit. And for that, I'll turn it over to Becky King.
Good afternoon. This is Becky King, Assistant Finance Director. So audit is going well. We do have a deadline of, I think it's next Sunday, maybe. And things are really going well. We've gotten everything requested to the auditors. They are still reviewing some stuff, but we are notes, statistical, all of that is produced and ready to go. The biggest challenge that we are facing right now is that we spent ARPA funds in fiscal year 21, and the single audit compliance supplement for ARPA has not been released. And we cannot file without that. They have to test it this year because we did spend money in fiscal year 21. So that right now is our holdup. There has been, they keep saying any day now it's going to be released. I check all the time. I know our auditors check all the time. So as soon as it's released, we're pretty much good to go. They have already tested ARPA the way they would have for any other federal grant. But of course, until that compliance supplement is out, we don't know if that was the correct way to do it or if there are any other little nuances that might show up in this supplement. So right now, that is our holdup. The LGC does give an automatic 1-month extension. You can file by November 30th and not have any penalties, anything along those lines. And I think at this point, that is the deadline that we are trying to hit because I don't know, in my mind, even if something came out this week for ARPA, I'm not sure we'll meet that October 31st deadline, unfortunately. That being said, though, the auditors are, we will have at least the financials of the audit done by, I believe it's November 18th, which is supposed to be the joint audit and finance meeting. So they will still be presenting at least everything that they can at that meeting to you guys. They are still planning on presenting to the full council in December. That one is still a little up in the air because if we haven't completely finished the financial audit, then we will have to postpone that one. There is some talk by the LGC that they might do another extension for people who did spend ARPA money in 21, but nothing has been finalized with that. So unfortunately, we are just waiting. We are in kind of a holding pattern. We are still answering a couple of questions. And of course, we're still putting the financial documents together. But really right now, there's not much more we can do until that compliance supplement has been released. So I wish I could say that we're definitely going to have it out by October. I would like it to be over, but unfortunately, it's out of our control, it's out of our auditor's control. So we are just doing what we can do. And as soon as it's released, we'll be ready to move forward with it.
Thank you, Becky. And we have a commitment from our auditor that they'll be on it. I mean, because I know sometimes, when there's a delay, the auditors start working on other clients and it's hard for them to get back. But are they pretty confident that that's not going to happen to us?
So they did mention we are doing weekly check-ins with them. They had stopped, but I put them back on the calendar to make sure that we are getting them what is needed, but they are also getting us what we need. They did mention, that if we were not going to meet our October 31st deadline, they might have to move on to other clients who will. And we said we understood, but that we still needed our stuff done on a timely basis. And as soon as that ARPA compliance is out, we want to be finished quickly. And we do Tony and I both keep reminding them of that. I have daily communications with someone from the team. So yes, I am keeping that very in the forefront so that they remember that we are here to meet deadlines. So yes.
And that, it's not really our fault. But I don't know. I just raise it to the highest level you can within that firm, because we just don't want to be in the same position we were in a couple of years ago.
No, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. But I appreciate it. And I'm glad the audit's going well, and there won't be any surprises.
No, I don't think there should be any surprises. Like I said, they have really been good about keeping in contact. And if I don't hear from them, I reach out because I want to know if there are issues and everything. They are still going through some stuff. So I can't say there won't be anything, but as they look through the last little bits, tick and tie, everything, I never know what might come to fruition. But no, as of right now, we're pretty good.
Sandra or Sage, you have any questions or comments? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Becky.
Thanks.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
And that's all we have. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. All right, so up next, we've got the Sanitation Mid-Year Review. I believe that we, when we went through the budget, we said that we were going to look at these fees again halfway through the year, and I believe that is what we're doing right now. So I appreciate the staff fulfilling on that commitment. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and I see Greg Schuler joined, but I'm going to actually introduce Jess Foster. I assume, Greg, you're just here for moral support. So
that's correct, Gwen.
Take it away, Jess, and Taylor, I guess, too. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, and appreciate the opportunity to take this time and kind of go through the service with you all as this is really sort of the first piece, I guess, of the FY23 budget process, which feels crazy to say since it's 2021, but it'll be here before you know it. So here we are. Go to the next slide. So quick review of what we're planning to cover. Jess is going to give you kind of an overview of the services that are provided by the Sanitation Division of Public Works. We'll both kind of talk a little bit about some of the service drivers from a budget perspective and kind of a more operational perspective. And then we're going to identify some areas where we think we have opportunities to invest in sanitation service with sort of a goal of providing you all with some information to inform conversations we expect to have later in the budget process, specifically around the consideration of fee increase to potentially help fund this. So, and this was already mentioned, next slide, but wanted to kind of remind you all why we're here, why we're doing this, and why we're bringing you this information now. We wanted to take some time before we get into the thick of the budget process to share some detailed information about sanitation, and later we'll be talking about stormwater as well, really because we haven't had time in the last few budget cycles to discuss these services, which are truly critical city services, in detail. So we're kind of taking that time right now to have that conversation. And, you know, again, as mentioned, you know, we kind of prefaced or foreshadowed this in the FY22 fee changes staff report that went to council and I believe was adopted May 11th. And I think with that, I'm going to pass it off to Jess.
Great. Thanks, Taylor. And thanks to the committee for having us here today and giving us the opportunity to talk about this important work that we do. So I'm just going to give an overview of the services now. You can go to the next slide. So sanitation services are really intertwined with and impact numerous aspects of the city's comprehensive plan and goals. Trash may not be something that you think about when you first think about how do we build a resilient economy or, you know, build interwoven equity into our community. People just want to set their trash out, have it disappear as quickly as possible and not think about it. And that's great, but it does really take a lot of thought and planning to make that happen. The way that we provide our services has impacts on land use, sidewalk development, walkability, bikeability, ADA access, and of course, a healthy environment. So it's really important to think about and plan for our sanitation services. We all need it, we all use it, and our staff are out there every single day driving through communities providing that service. So as the city grows and changes, we're really seeing impacts related to sanitation and issues like limited space, noise, cleanliness and aesthetics, frequency of collection. I don't know, maybe you've been downtown and you see an alley where there are folks living and there's 5 different dumpsters and there's 5 different companies coming through every single day. You know, that's having an impact on lots of things. So all of these things are part of a bigger conversation about the city and where we want to be in the future. And sanitation really aims to be part of the city's efforts to meet those community goals. Next slide. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the nitty-gritty of what we do every day. As Taylor said, we are a division of Public Works, and our core purpose and goal is to ensure public health and safety through the collection and disposal of trash, recycling, and yard waste. We also enforce sanitation ordinances. So Chapter 15 of the city's ordinances are related to sanitation, and so we are responsible for that. And one thing I just want to add about our work that's a little different than other departments in some ways is that our work really has to be completed every single day on a tight timeline in a timely fashion. You know, I can't say, hey, Deborah, sorry, I had a lot of meetings today, so we just couldn't get to your neighborhood to get the trash. Like, that doesn't work. We have to complete that work every single day. There's not a lot of flexibility in that service that we provide. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the trash service. We do provide weekly collection of curbside trash. And our trucks are hitting about 35,000 carts every week. We're running 10 different routes, and 7 of those routes are here, like this picture is an automated truck with the claw, and it's going to the house and picking up the can with the claw and dumping it. So we have 7 trucks every day going out and providing that service to residential customers at the curbside. Each of those trucks is picking up over 1,000 cans a day. So that's a lot. But we also have a few other routes that we're running every day. We provide, you know, door side set out service to folks who may be elderly or just physically unable to get their carts out to the road. We provide that to those folks free of charge. We also have to service some of our smaller roads that these big trucks can't go on. We have to use smaller rear packers, which are those trucks, the traditional kind where there's a person driving on the back of the truck and loading stuff into the back of the truck manually. We're using those on smaller roads, and we're also picking up bulky trash. So if you've got a couch or a broken dresser, you can put that out to the curb, and we're collecting that every week from customers as well. And that's a service that really goes to try to prevent illegal dumping. So, those are the things that we're providing curbside. We're also servicing street receptacles, downtown, West Asheville, and Biltmore. With this comes 70,000 carts that we have to keep an inventory on and repair and deliver, including over 600 bear carts that we rolled out over the past year, which is very exciting. And just want to point out that the city does not own any disposal facilities. So we dispose of this trash at the Buncombe County Transfer Station. And then from there, they take it to the Buncombe County landfill. Okay, next slide. We're also responsible for the recycling service. Recycling is picked up every other week curbside, and there are about 32,000 recycling carts out in the city that are being picked up every other week. That is a process that's contracted out with Curbside Management. We've had a long-term contract with them and just recently renewed it for another 5 years. So Curbside collects and processes our recyclables at their material recovery facility. The city also, our staff, sanitation staff, also does a once a week scrap metal recycling collection for residents. Okay, and next. And then finally, our brush and leaf service. We also collect every other week from residents in the city, and there's maybe 30,000 plus collection points that we're hitting every other week. So each week we've got 3 routes, and there's a rear packer with 3 staff on it that are going and manually loading leaves and brush into the truck. And then they've got another truck, a knuckle boom, which is the one with the big claw that goes and picks up the bigger piles. So they're driving through the city, picking up all of that, including year-round leaf collection, and all of that material is disposed of at the Riverside stump dump. Okay, next. So who are our curbside customers? The city does have the $14 a month solid waste fee. And with that package, they get all of those services that we just mentioned. And all single family housing customers receive that and pay that fee, and they cannot opt out of it. And it goes onto their water bill. We also provide this service to some multifamily and mixed use residential communities. It's kind of up to them. Well, it kind of depends on if we're able to provide service in an efficient way, but they can opt in or out. They may opt to have a private dumpster service if they are multifamily. It's just it's the whole development has to have it or not. And then we also provide trash collection service once a week to some small businesses. So if you're a small business and you only need trash in a cart once a week, we can provide that. But if they want recycling service, they have to contract that separately. Okay, next. And as I mentioned, we also do Ordinance Enforcement, which is Chapter 15, and that's all related to just ensuring community-wide public health and safety. So we get over 500 complaints a year, anything ranging from overgrown lots, which might be causing a rat problem, excessive litter and debris piled up in a yard. Responding to homeless camp sanitation issues has been a big one for the past couple of years. Illegal dumping, even carts stuffed on streets or on sidewalks and blocking the sidewalk all week long. We're responding to issues like that. So our goal is always to work with the property owner to help them get into compliance. And we have 4 staff who go out and respond to enforce ordinance enforcement issues. But those same 4 staff are also supervising all of the collection services and the staffing that I mentioned before. So they've got their plates full. Okay. Sage, did you have a question?
I do, and this is really helpful. So thanks for all this information, Jess. So can you tell me a little bit more about the process? So for instance, I use the Asheville app to report an area in town that had some excessive trash just kind of lingering around. It's on private property though, so I really wasn't sure what the procedure was. So I put it on the app and I got the update that had been received. Is that the proper way? And when that property owner receives this, what is the time period? Like at what rate should we expect it to be cleaned up or dealt with? Do they get 30 days or?
Yeah, so that is one way to report it. We take phone calls and emails, Asheville apps as well, and then we go and investigate. And typically the enforcement officer will start with a conversation. Hey, could you get this cleaned up? And we might issue a warning to them. Typically, they do have 30 days to get their property into compliance. If they haven't at the end of that 30 days, then they might be issued a notice of violation where they get a little bit more time. And if they don't meet that, then they would receive a citation, which is, a fine of $100 a day if they don't get it into compliance. We typically try not to get to that point where we're fining people, especially, sometimes the issues are such that, threatening with a fine or asking them to pay a fine is not really going to solve the problem. It just depends on the area, but it can take time.
Right. Thank you. And then kind of a follow-up. So in the past, I've used the Asheville app as well to, say, report a mattress I'd seen left on a street for a few weeks. Is that a good way to handle that? Or if I'm a homeowner and I know that I have a mattress I'm going to toss, do they preemptively call and schedule? I'd just love to be able to inform people when they ask me this because I really don't know.
Sure. So we do provide that bulky collection service to everybody who's paying that fee. So, if you've got a mattress that you want to get rid of, you can just call it in and say, hey, I've got this item, and you put it out at the curb. It's always the day after your collection day. And we've got a list and we go and collect that material. A lot of folks don't call us, and we see it out and we go ahead and grab it. But if you see something illegally dumped, you can report it, and we try to get to that as well.
Is the actual app a good source for that? Is that a preferred method, or does the department prefer a call? Like, what's the best? Because it does work with the app.
Sure. I think that, the app certainly works. One of our issues with the app is that you might report it. I guess that would work with a phone call too, but, we might get 10 apps for the same thing. And it's not integrated with our current work order system. So we take your app and respond to it, and then we go and then we put it into our work order system. So sometimes it's a little bit of double work for us. If you just call, we put it directly into our work system. But either way is great. If it's easy for you to push the button, go for it.
Very helpful. Thank you.
So yes, what is the call number?
It's 259-5857. That's how I remember it. 259-5857. You can also call customer service, but we do have a customer service person in our office who only works on sanitation issues, so we take direct calls there.
And one other thing I want to ask you is I noticed that when they pick up the bulk or whatever, a lot of times televisions and computers are left. What is the proper recourse or disposal of those?
So we don't collect televisions. They can't go into the regular trash. We do not have a good system for folks to dispose of that right now. People can take it to the Buncombe County landfill on their TV recycling days, or they can take it to one of the Asheville Greenworks hard to recycle days. But they're not allowed to go directly into the landfill. So we don't currently have a collection program for TVs.
And are you planning on, and the reason I say that is I've noticed that a lot of those around the neighborhood, and they just sit and no one's going to take them to those places. They just put them on the side of the road. And I'm just wondering if it's something that we could actually, put in place to deal with that. I know it's not something you do, but maybe even if you got, people that sort of volunteer that, I don't know if you get any volunteers or whatever, that would be some way to handle it. But I've noticed a lot of that, and that is, it looks bad.
Yeah, tires and TVs are a gap for us, we'll talk about this a little bit. It's one of our challenges, and with extra capacity, I'm sure we could put a program in place that would take care of it in a better way. It's just not our model right now, but it is something that we are aware of, and we need to figure out a way to address it better.
So what would you suggest?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in
the slide.
Let's.
Okay.
I think maybe we'll get to it, and if we don't, we can circle back around to it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So I think I'm going to turn it over to Taylor now to talk about, is that right? Service drivers and challenges.
Got some numbers on the next slide, I think. So I guess it's my turn to talk again. So this is an overview of the current year FY22 adopted budget for the Sanitation Division. Y'all hopefully have seen this style before. We broke this down a little more than we typically do to make note of a couple things. One, just to say it is a fairly large operation at around $6 million total for the Sanitation Division. But if you look at these things that we've broken out, the recycling contract that's with curbside management, fleet maintenance and fuel budget, tipping fees for the landfill, and honestly, to a large degree, the personnel costs are kind of fixed in a way. So if you think about a $6 million budget and you really only have a little over $300,000 in kind of operating costs associated with that, it's not a lot of flexibility and it's a lot of costs that we don't have a lot of control over. Again, going back, the recycling contract, we've entered into a new one. So that's just that cost is pretty much fixed for the next 5 years. And similarly with tipping fees, if Buncombe County decides to raise the tipping fees, we have to pay them. So that kind of is what it is. So again, a large operation, but not a ton of flexibility even within their existing budget. So if we go to the next slide, kind of have a little bit of a history of the budget for the Sanitation Division. And really kind of just to make note, this is not actuals, this is adopted budget. And we chose to show that because, I think as we're kind of thinking about how we prioritize service investments, you can kind of see we haven't really added a lot to the Sanitation Division over the last few years, despite some of the population growth we've seen and some other things. The last time that we had a fee increase was fiscal year 16-17, about 5 years ago. And since that time, we've added one additional position in FY20 for code enforcement. And you can even see in 19 as a budget balancing strategy, we actually had a little dip where we took the roll cart replacement and actually funded that for a year out of our capital program to just try to balance the budget that year. There is a pretty substantial increase in the current year budget, from about 5.4 million to not quite 6.1. But that's really almost entirely due to two things. One is that new recycling contract that we entered into. We saw some significant increase in that cost based on the recycling industry and some of the things that are happening there. And then the other thing is the implementation of a compensation study, which impacted not just the Sanitation Division, but the entire city. And one thing I think I do want to point out that while that's not new positions, funding that new compensation structure is an opportunity for us to be able to stabilize staffing and I think see some more job applications when we have postings. So there's certainly some significant operational benefits to that compensation study. So I just want to take a moment to express appreciation for you all in funding the implementation of that. So next slide, kind of break down the staffing, and Jess spoke to this a little bit. We have 37 folks total in the Sanitation Division. And really the main thing I kind of want to point out here is, and Jess already kind of alluded to this, is that code enforcement service, if you will, is being provided by folks that are also overseeing the collections operations. And as you can imagine, trying to supervise people that aren't staying in one place for very long, and also respond to those code enforcement issues is not an easy thing to do. So those folks certainly have a difficult job. Oh, and one more thing too is we do keep around 4 temp seasonal staff just to make sure that we can keep up with basic service delivery as folks are out for whatever reason, that we have kind of a way to backfill, and also present some opportunity for job progression for employees as well. Next slide. I think we're going to, so fees. I think the main takeaway here is you can see that the monthly solid waste fee brings in almost all of the revenue from the fees. Most of the other ones are relatively small. The bear resistant carts, Jess mentioned those as well. That's been an added kind of service expansion or enhancement that we did recently. And those fees, we are getting additional fees from that, but we're also having to purchase much more expensive carts. So that's kind of balancing out there. And then also, I think Jess did mention earlier that just to make note on that set out and set back, we do have an exemption to that fee for folks with health or mobility challenges. So, that's why that fee, that revenue is so low, because we don't charge folks that, don't have that ability to get their cart out to the curb. So just kind of wanted to make note of that. I think with that, that's all the number heavy slides. So I'm going to pass it back off to Jess. Yes, ma'am. Question.
I can wait for Jess. That's fine.
Okay.
That's okay. Did you have a question about budget?
Yeah, well, the only thing I was going to say is I was looking at all the services you provide and the budget, and I'm really amazed at what a low budget you all have to work with for the services that you provide for a city this size. And I was just wondering, how does it stack up with comparable cities of this size, your budget, as opposed to other cities? Or if you had an idea.
I haven't looked at, or I don't have other cities' budgets in front of me. Last year, I had looked at, done a comparison of fees, with comparable cities in North Carolina, and we were among the lowest fee. I think Charlotte maybe had a lower fee than us, but had a lot of resources. A lot of other cities have higher fees, and then also on top of that, charge for extra services. So they might charge $20 a month, and then also charge if you need 5 large loads of brush picked up instead of 1. So everybody's got a different sort of mixture there. But when I did look before, our fee was among the lowest.
But certainly we can get that information for you. I'm sorry, Ms. Whistler.
Yeah. And we made a conscious decision when we adopted recycling not to add that as an expense, as a fee. And so this it encompasses both solid waste and recycling. So I know in other cities, I don't know about North Carolina because I'm sure we have some law, but I know other places I've lived, you had to recycle, but you also had to pay for it. But we made a conscious decision when we adopted the Big Blue that we were not going to do that. So I think that's, the other thing is that we don't incrementally charge for recycling, and a lot of other communities actually do.
And, I would say, in doing that, it encourages recycling. The same can be said for, the fact that we pick up your bulky collection for free, if it's a way to sort of prevent or curtail illegal dumping, because if you just didn't want to pay the fee, maybe you just go dump it somewhere. So, having an all-inclusive fee can have benefits like that.
And one other question, and this, Taylor brought this up, and I just wanted to ask this question. The tipping fees for Buncombe County, who else pays that? I think, what do all the other municipalities pay that in Buncombe County? Is our tipping fee consistent with theirs? And are we really, I'm not suggesting this, but if we were to find, are we obligated to actually use Buncombe County's landfill? Or, say, for example, somebody in some other community, I don't know, had a big hole in the ground and they wanted to fill it up with trash. Could we go to another community? Could we go to another service and dump and tip our solid waste?
We're certainly not bound to use the Buncombe County landfill, but it is the most cost-effective option, and having that convenience of being able to dump our trash at the transfer station, which is, in the center of the city when our trucks are driving all over the place every day. That's a huge benefit to us. There is one other transfer station near there, and it is more expensive.
And how do our fees compare to other municipalities?
It's a standardized fee that they publish on their website, and we all pay the same standardized fee. They do have the rebate program available to haulers now. So folks who, organizations that bring in over a certain amount of tonnage every year get some rebate percentage. And that's for private haulers and municipalities.
And so the city benefits from that rebate program, I think. Okay.
We do.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we're at the next slide. So I just want to talk a little bit about our service area growth. We are seeing around 300 collection points added every year over the past several years. So, while that might only break down to like one trash collection point per route per week, we really have to think about it as more than just that's one extra, that's 300 extra trash cans to pick up. It's like 300 extra customers that we're providing our whole range of services to, our brush collection, our bulky collection, our cart inventory, all of that stuff. So that's kind of what we're seeing as far as growth on our end. And one of the challenges that I really, I've been talking a lot about is it's not just single family home growth. That how we are growing is really one of the biggest challenges that we're facing. So we are seeing more mixed use and infill development, more multifamily housing, tiny homes, ADUs. We're really looking as a city to increase our density as we grow. And that really presents a challenge to the sanitation division, which are really, our operation is more modeled after servicing a single family home kind of operation there. So we kind of need to go reevaluate and reconsider how we're providing those services so that we can best meet the needs of all of our residents who are in different types of housing situations.
And Jess, can I ask another question? So you also service like downtown. You do all the picking up for the solid waste that's in public, on public property. So you're also I believe, and you're also then responsible for, or you're having to service the increased tourism that comes and the related solid waste associated with the more visitors that we're having.
Right. Yeah. An increase in visitors with COVID, especially, the increase in takeout containers and things like that were a real problem.
And masks on the street.
Yeah, but as downtown expands, we're getting more requests like, can we get receptacles in South Slope? Can we get receptacles over here? West Asheville, as Haywood Road is expanding, we're getting, requests for that. So yes. Okay, next slide. I did want to mention the city's waste reduction goal. The city does have a waste reduction goal to reduce landfill waste by 50% by 2035. And that goal was based on 2010 levels. So, as you can see on the chart, the 2010 baseline level, that solid blue line that's where we were in 2010, around 23,500 tons of trash a year. The goal is the dashed line going down. We're trying to reduce it by 50% by 2035. So in order to be on target to meet that goal, we should be at a 15% reduction by now. And instead, you can see the little dot at the top. We're actually going in the opposite direction and have seen an increase of about 3% over that baseline goal. We do have, the Sanitation Division does have an active partnership with the Office of Sustainability, working to implement initiatives to reduce our waste. We're just not quite meeting that goal as it has been set.
Jess, this is Gwen, and I wasn't on council when we actually set these goals, but fortunately or unfortunately, I've been here since 2013, and I know the year that I got on council, we actually hit our goal. So it must have been me. Just joking. But that was just based on actual. It wasn't based on population. Well, that was probably an interesting way to do it.
Correct.
Not going to comment on, I'm going to phrase it that way. But if you said, okay, 50% based on population, what would this slide look like?
I would have to get those numbers.
Okay.
I don't have those numbers, but yes, you are correct that the goal could be worded in a different way.
Yeah, I just think it's a worthy goal, but I'm also thinking that if we said, well, maybe we should have set the goal based on population. That 50%, for every one person, we want it to go to be reduced by 50%. It would just be interesting to see what that is. I still don't think we'd probably be on target, but hopefully, I saw Greg in the chat said it would be better, I hope. But I would just be interested in that information. And one of the things that I think would be interesting is I know at one time Stacey looked at this kind of by neighborhood. And it might be interesting to look at, I think it was recycling maybe by neighborhood. I'm not sure exactly how they did it, but I wonder if that information and if we could get some kind of friendly competition within neighborhoods with some of these might be helpful.
Absolutely. I think we could revisit the goal and look at different programs to implement to get there. I'd say that dip in 2012, aside from you joining council, also had to do with the rolling out of the big blue carts. That more capacity for people to recycle is what really helped with that reduction. But I would say beyond, I've been here for maybe almost 4 years, and really nothing significant has changed in the way that we're rolling out waste reduction programs in that time. Okay.
Interesting. I'm the safety liaison, so I will take this up with that committee, see if we can't get some thinking going on over there. and updates. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So real quick, just want to talk about some collection challenges. I already mentioned downtown and multifamily collection being a challenge. I mean, this is really one of the nicer looking alleys. I think this is Carolina Lane, but you can see there's all kinds of carts. And so if you can imagine, if you're doing some development here and you're putting a business in on the ground floor and 30 new residences on top, and, so what are you doing? Putting 30 trash carts and 30 recycling carts in the alley, and people are trying to walk and there's deliveries happening. I mean, it's just, it can get a little wild in there. So that's a challenge that I think we face downtown. We're seeing increasing volume in our yard debris. And I think there's a concern that with climate change and more storms in our future, we could be seeing increases in debris as we move forward with yard debris. We do have some efficiency issues that we would be excited to address. So for example, during leaf season, this is not an uncommon scene for our collection folks. They get to a house and there's 100 plastic bags tied together, and they have to stand there and open and shake out every single one of those bags. And that's just the way our ordinance is written, that's an acceptable method. And so, looking at something like a requirement for paper leaf bags and reusable containers might be something that we would like to consider moving forward. Move outs are also an issue. So like the bulky program for free is great. But then some folks do take advantage of it if you have a rental property with high turnover and you got folks moving out every few months and property owners just pushing all that stuff to the street and we're picking that up for free. That's not really our intention with that service, but that is something that's happening. Next slide. We have cart violations. So this one on the top left it's a great example of lots of things. You've got carts way too close together. So if the arm goes to pick that up, it's going to knock everything over. They're being left on a sidewalk, so people can't use that sidewalk. They're left overnight. But it's also a great example. It's like you have these, sort of like a different kind of community here where there's some multifamily housing going on, but then every single person has this cart, So like there's a better way to do this, I think, for different types of housing units. We get brush collection issues. Like this picture is where residents piled some brush on top of a utility box and our claw went to pick it up and ripped it out of the ground. So we've seen a bit of that recently, but also just folks hiring contractors to do big work and then the contractors leaving it at the curb. We got to catch them in the act if we really want to curb that. People just making their plastic bags too heavy. Then we have homelessness encampments with sanitation issues. And illegal dumping. So, that's an obvious concern and people look to us as we're the trash collectors. But like I said earlier, our staff are out driving trucks on prescribed routes every day, picking up trash. And so I can't just say, hey, Gordon, could you come off your route today and let's go clean up this site? Like he's got to get his route done for the day so that your trash is picked up. So there's not a lot of flexibility currently for our staff to address these community needs that we have. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we're addressing challenges and how we might address them moving forward. Are there any questions?
Just before you go on, could you really talk about the illegal dumping?
Sure. It happens, and there are some places around the city where people just drive in and dump things. And to be honest, I don't understand it because, like I said, most folks are paying the fee for bulky collection. We can try to dig through it at times and find names. Sometimes people leave their mail or an address in it, and then we can address it directly. There are some hot spots, where we've discussed maybe game cameras or something like that. But, enforcement can be difficult and it's probably not if we're talking about a criminal activity, this might not be on APD's highest priority list if we called them right now. They got a lot on their plates too. So I'm not sure what is, Did you have a specific question about it or just?
Well, I just wanted you to raise that issue up because it's similar to the homelessness encampments. It's something that we just don't go off a route and try to address. And it's complaint based for the most part. Somebody sees it and then we respond.
It is. And also just litter can kind of breed more illegal dumping. If we're not able to go pick.
Uh-oh, Jess, we lost you. I wonder if she knows.
I'm
This is
hoping.
Greg. I
Greg.
just texted her.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Greg.
But yeah, it is, I think they call it the broken window syndrome. If you, when we have, whether it be just roadside litter itself breeds illegal dumping. And we don't have a way currently to address either of those if it's within the city right of way. Because like Jess laid out, the folks that we have are busy taking care of residential solid waste collection. That's what we're set up for. We want to grow. We want to be more of what our community expects from us. And that will be part of the part of Jess's and Taylor's the end of this presentation. Sage, I don't know if I have the answer, but you've had your hand up and waiting patiently.
Well, I mean, really, and I would love for Jess to hear this. I'm just amazed. This has got to be a complicated issue at every turn. It's hard to deal with. So appreciations, first and foremost. This is something I hear a lot about from the community, the cleanliness of our community at this time and whether or not it has gotten worse or, sometimes I think the pandemic has just kind of made us see things we didn't see before. Maybe it's exacerbated issues, but I am curious, it sounds like we might hear a little bit about the needs to do better at the end of this presentation. And I am curious how we can do better. I am curious how we can inform the community members more about bulky pickup and ways that they can help their neighborhood stay clean by using the app and so on. Because it's so much of this is just complaint driven. I really think people don't know. I don't think they know they can do this or what it looks like. I answer a question all the time about, what about that mess down the street? Is there anything that can be done? And I send them to the app. So I think there's just an education component always. But I would be curious going forward, like when we start talking about next year's budget and stuff, how do we clean up a little bit more?
And one question I have too is, given the fact that the county, the municipalities in the county are not required to have waste disposal services, do we attribute any of this illegal dumping to that policy out in the county, in the sense that, they have to pay incrementally and have to, enter into a contract in order to get waste disposal services? I mean, do we think that people out in the county are just bringing it into the city so that that we'll pick it up?
I think so, and I'll give my 2 cents worth and then turn it back over to Jess. I see that she's back. But otherwise, Gwen, I think so, because why would you take it and haul it somewhere else when you can just put it on your curb as a city resident that's paying the fee and it gets done? So yeah, I think so. And for that, I'll stop here and turn it back over to Jess. Thanks for your questions. And I look forward to the end of this so we can talk about how we can do better. We, as professionals, we want to do better. We know our community wants that too, but as with everything, it's a balancing act as far as resources. Back over to you, Jess.
Apologies. It sounds like you answered the question. An analysis of that would be interesting. We have had issues around the border of the city limits in some places.
Yeah, I would think that, to verify that sort of assumption, or if we're experiencing dumping, right on the edge of the city where, you've got folks who are not getting waste pickup, I would imagine that is part of the problem. And, I'm just wondering if there's some conversations we need to be having with the county that, maybe they need to rethink that policy.
I think that's something we could certainly look into. We also see issues with multifamily housing. So let's just, if you got an apartment complex and they don't have a system in place for folks when they move in and out, then we see a lot of illegal dumping from that. And a lot of cities have moved to ways of providing a different type of service to multifamily housing, or, the city having requirements for multifamily housing to have these operations in place. And we currently don't have anything like that.
Sage?
Yep, just briefly, Jess, when you were frozen, we were just doing a little acknowledgement and thank you of y'all's department for what must be, an ongoing, never-ending, always exploding issue. So just thank you. Sorry you missed that happy part. I am curious about, my goodness, I just lost my train of thought. I totally lost it. Never mind. I'll pause.
Well, we can come back to it. Thanks. I think we can just keep moving in the interest of time. We just wanted to talk about some ways that we're addressing the challenges. And I'll just keep this piece really brief. Even with a limited budget, we have been looking for ways to try to improve our service and our efficiency throughout Public Works. We've been implementing technology called AVL systems, which stands for Automatic Vehicle Locator, but it does a lot more than that, especially in sanitation service. So, you've got this smart technology on a truck that improves our safety and our customer service. So, for example, a driver could have a tablet in his truck and he's able to follow the route. So he knows where the 1,000 carts are that he has to pick up that day. If he misses something, it flags it. If he sees an illegal pile, he can hit a button. It goes to the office. Particularly helpful if you've got a new driver, who's trying to look at a paper, old school route sheet, and then also drive that huge truck and get the job done for the day. So our AVL program, we have been able to implement, and it is helping us be, more safe, more sustainable. It can also do things like monitor our driving patterns and our workloads and our emissions and our fuel usage. So that's a program that we are excited about. Next.
Jess, I just remember, I'm sorry, and I know we have a 3 o'clock, so I don't want to keep us and run over. I knew at some point in downtown we were doing an experiment with the multifamily dumpster thing. I think it was Chicken Alley. Did we do that? And are we still doing kind of pilots of trying to treat multifamily differently?
We have not implemented that. It's something that we've discussed, and I did recently meet again with the Center for Craft and Chris Joyelle. So, there is this idea where, some downtowns have zoned trash service. So instead of everybody in a zone having a cart, you've got one trash dumpster or compactor. They all pitch in to use it. And we are talking about potentially doing a pilot program in Carolina Lane and Chicken Alley. Like I said, that's not something that our fee structure and our ordinance is not set up to allow us to do that. So it's part of this discussion. Okay, next slide. Okay, so obviously we want to maintain the level of service that we have been providing. And, with the city growth, in order to do that, I think additional positions are just going to be needed to keep up with the sheer number of increasing collection points. We're going to see increasing costs in our recycling contract every year, which is just part of a regular annual CPI increase. But I do think it's really important. We need to take a big holistic look at a full-scale review of our operations and our fee structure and our ordinances and figure out how we can address all of these different challenges that we've talked about in a holistic way. I could go in and write, okay, now we're going to charge everybody for bulky, but what ramifications is that going to have? And is it the right way to put it into like a whole integrated solid waste management structure? I think we need to do like a comprehensive review and engagement process with the community to figure out how to address all these challenges so that we can grow our operations with the city and provide them in a way that's like equitable, and we meet our waste reduction goals, and we meet our customer service goals. Okay, next. Our community has voiced concerns or, support for reducing waste and also concerns about cleanliness. Those are things that, as we've talked about, our staffing doesn't have a lot of capacity for right now. So staffing that's just dedicated to waste reduction and recycling would really provide the ability to develop and deliver programs so that we can achieve those goals. Staffing dedicated to roadside litter, homeless camp cleanup, illegal dumping cleanup, and any other maintenance challenges that we're having around the city would really help us to address those concerns as well and maintain public health. Okay, I think maybe I'll turn it over to Taylor now.
Okay, I get to share the good news here slide.
Hey.
As we've kind of discussed previously, that monthly fee is really the only one that raises significant revenue right now. So obviously that's going to be in the conversation when we start thinking about, if we're going to add resources to the sanitation division, to these services, to kind of meet some of these challenges that Jess was just talking about. That's a clear option. It's not the only option. We can also fund this service. This is budgeted and partially funded through general revenues. So, our regular kind of tax base, property tax, sales tax. Obviously, the challenge there, right, is that we have to prioritize it against other services and programs that are funded that way, which are most of the services and programs that the city provides. That certainly is a challenge there. And then, just to kind of make a note, I don't think this is maybe not the option that we've really kind of discussed here, but there is an option to potentially reduce service. And that could look a lot of different ways. But I do want to kind of make note that I think we're at a point where this is, the no change option is really this third choice. The service is stretched, as Jess said, like they don't have the staffing resources to be able to address these kind of one-off unique items that we see with the homelessness, cleanliness issues, litter, illegal dumping, all of that stuff. So, just to make note that is something, we have limited resources and we have to make tough decisions. And, that is an option that we can pursue if that's the choice of council. So, so after all of that good news, I think we have one more slide. Like I said, we haven't invested any really significant additional resources in increasing the service in sanitation over the last several years, the last fee change being in FY17. And we are going to be challenged to maintain even our existing service level without some additional resources. And then lastly, essentially, as we kind of have foreshadowed, I think, throughout this presentation, staff is reviewing the, opportunity to, bring a fee increase related to sanitation services to council. And, that's something that we'll come back with later in the budget process. And if you all have any other questions or have any information, as we're looking forward to that next step, that would be helpful for you all as you consider these options and trade-offs. That would be good to know, so we can be responsive and make sure that you have the information you need to make an informed decision.
What I would like to say, this information you've given us today, it's answered so many questions that I've had since before I got on council, but because my concern was the sanitation of the city. And now I see why. And like I said earlier, the budget that you've worked within and your confines with the limited resources, you've done an amazing job with what you've had to contend with. And I think we definitely have to do something about this. And like I said, and now at least I understand why. So it's something I think that should be top of the hat for council, as well as other private partners in the community. We may actually have to do something. As far as I'm concerned, I've talked to TDA before about, I feel that there's some of they benefit tremendously from the city's resources, and the cleanliness is one thing that actually affects them and the people that come here. So I have talked to TDA about trying to do some type of partnership where they actually could maybe invest in some type of venture to keep the city clean with resources they have. And I will be continuing that conversation now that I've seen basically the issue. So hopefully, like I said, we will be able to work together. But and I greatly appreciate this because it has helped me immensely understand a lot of things that I didn't understand about the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Kilgore. I appreciate that. And I do want to say shout out to the Public Works staff. It was a collaborative effort to put all this information together, and they were very helpful. And, I think this is the kind of thing that, again, we haven't gotten the opportunity to really talk about some of these kind of core services that the city provides that people rely on every day, right? That's really important, right? Like, people care a lot. If they have, folks illegally dumping on their street or in their neighborhood, that's a huge problem that we need to figure out how to address. So we appreciate the opportunity to kind of bring this information forward to you all. And we'd love, I'd love to be able to do this with all of our services, with all of council, but, we're about out of time here. And, unfortunately, we just have to try to prioritize where we spend time talking about stuff, but certainly something that we want to do more of in the budget process and in this year's budget process. So thank you.
So Jess, you talked about, sort of looking at this holistically about, maybe a different delivery model for multifamily, and looking at, how we deliver the service, et cetera. Is that going to be done? Will we have that information by the beginning of the budget cycle? Do you need allocation to study this? How's that going to happen? And then remind me how, I probably could just ask my husband right now, but where do people pay their sanitation fee? Is it with their water bill? No.
It is.
Well, one thing Greg and I talked about, I sit on the MSD board, and frankly, we routinely every year come high or low water, we're increasing the fees, and it's basically just, to maintain or increase service levels, but it's done every year, but it's incremental. It's not $3.50. That's a lot in 1 year. And I guess I would really like us to look at the pros and cons of sort of putting a plan in place where, look, it's just inflation, or it's, putting together a plan that says, in the next 5 years, we want to increase our service by X, Y, and Z. And in order to do that, we're going to need to put small fee increases in every year. I mean, for me, I guess I would much prefer, you know, a concept of I'm just going to expect a 50 cent, not 50%. I didn't mean that, people. A 50-cent increase every year. And that's just what I build into my own household budget. I mean, MSD gets away with it every year. And frankly, you're probably getting blamed for MSD's increases. So I guess I would just like us to think about that, you know, that we again, the county doesn't even require people to have, and so county residents are paying incrementally. And I assure you, they don't just, you know, once every 20 years get a fee increase. It's probably going up, you know, a little bit every year. So I guess I would like us to look at that. But then but my first question was, how are we going to answer all these questions that you brought up?
So I would propose that we look at developing a long-range master plan for the city. It's something that a lot of cities have. I think maybe we've had one in the past, but we don't currently have, you know, a long-range solid waste master plan that looks at, you know, what is the best way to structure our operations, and like, what does the city look like growing in the next 10 years? How do we structure the fees? And do we have an incremental plan, or do we charge a la carte for some services? And how do we meet our waste reduction goals? You know, are there things that we want to look at over the next 10 years? That's what I would be looking to help us answer all those questions.
But Ms. Whistler, that's not going to happen between now and the time that we have the budget process.
Right.
We're probably a year or two, even if we even started it probably next year, it would still be another year before we would have those answers. But I think what we want to do this year is to start to build a foundation of incrementally having an adjustment, probably to the fees, and then look into, are there some additional incremental steps that we can take while that plan is being produced and developed? Because I think where we are, and we have talked about this, I know definitely since I've been here, is we have got to rethink and put more emphasis on our core services. We just got to get back to basics, and that is going to be certainly a priority for this budget cycle.
Right. Sage, did you have a question? I'm sorry, I felt like no.
Not really a question. I just know that I hear from constituents about the increasing need for the bear-proof cans and some upsetness around the fee. And someone had emailed and said there are potentially grants. So if we're going to be brainstorming like this, you know, how do we clean up? I know there's been a study on our bears being too large and eating too much human food and dying from plastic, and it's a multifaceted issue. But this is the, you know, arena it sits in. So getting better ways to provide more bear-free or proof cans would be helpful.
You know, I think there are things that we know what we need to do right now. And, you know, we know that we're going to need staff to, you know, address these 300 extra, you know, residences every year. Like there are things that we do know and maybe just need some additional capacity to address. And then there's other things that might, you know, take a little time, but we're looking at long range.
So for example, when we had our council retreat, and you all identified, you know, community appearance as an issue. You know, staff went off and worked on, you know, trying to cost that out, and we finally kind of have those numbers. So we know, you know, if we added additional staff to address kind of cleanup and community appearance, what that would cost us. So those are the kinds of things that we want to introduce to council. Again, it's almost some baby steps, and then having a more broader, holistic look at the total restructuring and all that, but we may need some additional assistance to look at those things.
Okay, thank you. Well, I found this incredibly informative, and I always appreciate city staff and what you guys do, but the more you learn, the more you really go, wow, this is probably hard to do, really hard to do. And you do it effortlessly and with smiles on your faces. It's very nice. But with that, we didn't get any public comments before the meeting, but I will ask staff if we have anybody if there's anybody on the line that wants to make public comment.
There is nobody on the line.
Unbelievable. This was such a good presentation, and maybe there's a lot of people watching, but you've answered all their questions. And so there's no public comment, but you have a vast audience out there.
I really appreciate the opportunity. I could talk trash, and I do talk trash all day long, every day. I'm always up for it. So
we love talking trash with you too, Jess.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jess. Great job. Thank you.
Thanks
Taylor.
so much. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting.